This evaporator is really good for producing about 140 liters by the end of the whole season. And the season usually starts in the sort of the 1st of March, and then it goes to the first week of April. And what I do is to boil down the sap as much as possible. Now, when you have a 40-to-1 ratio, you've got to boil an awful lot of down, and then I add more, and then eventually, when it's fairly thick, and I can tell that, I'll show you the gadget we use, then I can take it up for the final finishing, which is then done on my barbecue, and I'll show you that a little later. This has some challenges. I have succeeded in boiling it down so far that it's maybe only, say, got an inch of syrup or sap, near syrup, on the bottom. And then I've noticed it bubbling away and not realizing that it then burns right onto the metal. Now, once it burns onto the metal, you've got a burned taste in your syrup. So you got to throw everything out. So you can boil this down for several hours, quite a few hours, and then end up in doing foolish things like I've done, causing it to burn, and then you've got to take your whole evaporator and curlicate and water and scrub it and scrub it and scrub it so you have a nice shiny clean surface to work with. Otherwise you cannot do any of this without creating a terrible tasting syrup. So as you go along, you should taste it to be sure that you're going in the right direction. Now, the first syrup that you get out will be a light syrup. It doesn't have a lot of the ingredients from the trees, and as you proceed, it'll get darker and darker, and eventually you can end up with even black looking syrup, and different people like different tastes. Some people like the very light. All chefs use the darker either amber or black syrup because it's much more tasty when you cook with it. Now, you really don't have to have a sophisticated setup like this. You can start off with one tree and concrete blocks and put rebar across the tops of the concrete, and you can boil it down just as easily. What some people have done is said, oh, well, we don't have to do that outside, we can do it in the kitchen. Well, I should remind people, and I haven't made that mistake of boiling a lot of syrup in the kitchen, because my wife would probably kill me if I did, because she doesn't like little bits of maple syrup dangling from the ceiling. But some people have done that. So it should be done outside, but you can take the pots, same kind of pots that we use, and put on the barbecue for finishing. And I'll show you what I have over here. Okay, this is the size of pot that I like to put onto the barbecue. So I've got to get the sap, or near syrup, from the evaporator up to my house where the barbecue is located. I used to have pails like this, and I would put them on the toboggan and pull them along, and some of the stuff would fall out. I wasn't sophisticated as I am now with a pail, but you can actually screw into the top of it, and you don't lose any at all, if no matter how you're bringing it up to the final processing. It's maybe tricky finding places that will sell these pails to you, but they are very handy. Now, once you get up to where you're going to do the finishing, you will want to have a pail that goes right into the barbecue. You can remove the top layer in the barbecue where you put your grill your steaks. Remove that, and this can be put right into the barbecue. And so when you buy a barbecue, you need to have the depths of the barbecue and the width of the barbecue that you want for the number of pails that you will use. If you're just doing one tree, that's great with concrete blocks, and you can produce your sap and get near the final stage of the maple syrup. Now, to get to the final stage of maple syrup, the easiest and simplest way is to have a thermometer. And boiling water is 100 degrees, and 7 more degrees produces your maple syrup. If you buy a fancy gadget like this, it has maple syrup, butter, soft sugar, hard sugar, so that you can end up producing some really tasty stuff. And if you're really showing off for your family, you can take ice cubes from your fridge, chop them all up, put them on a tray, either in the woods or outside, and dribble your hard syrup onto the ice, and roll it up, and you got toffee. So you've got all the technology that you actually need. I don't do that anymore. I use a refractometer, which is my way of getting the exact density of sap that I want to put into bottles. And the reason I do that is that it has a scale inside, and the 1 drop is put right on here, and you drop this down, you look through it, and when it's all focused, you can see exactly the density by a number, and your number should be fairly close to 6.5, and this will give you the density of syrup that will allow you to put it into the bottles when it's very hot, and then it should be good for 100 years. You should not have any of what they call sand grains on the bottom of the bottle. Like, you should never get any of that if you're putting the right density of syrup into the bottles. There is no such thing as sand, really, but people call it sand just because they've got a super concentrated solution, and the sugar begins to come out of the solution.